Six Stages Gaming is brought to you by GamersGauntlet.net. Check them out for all your singles, sealed product, and playmats.
Hello guys, and welcome to another Opus 1 set review for Final Fantasy TCG. Today I'll be talking about Earth, but first I want to give a very special shout out to another YouTube channel I think you guys should follow. It is Josephier Gaming, or just Josephier. I'll drop a link down below in the comment section. Make sure to check him out. He has quite a few videos up for Final Fantasy TCG, and I know he's looking forward to getting started in the next couple weeks, and he's from the UK if I'm not mistaken, so he already has product on hand, so very much look forward to content from him coming soon. But now we have Earth, the strong, the brave, and let me tell you, these spoilers are going to rock your world. Let's get right into it. So up first we have Amodar. He is a 4-drop backup with an EX burst effect, so again that means whenever you play him or you reveal it off the top of your deck from taking damage, you get that effect. Now, what I really like about this is it finally is, and I think it's the only tutor card if I'm not mistaken, that specifically names 2 cards that lets you search for. Now, some of them will say category 7, 10, or 13. Some of them will just say lightning if I'm not mistaken. They have a few different parts about them, but this one lets you look for lightning and snow. What I really like about this, and both those are 2 different elements, so this card really does have some flexibility to it. You can either play it in a Earth Ice deck, tutor up snow, really get that tempo going, or you can play it in an Earth Lightning deck, and Lightning is very control heavy unless you're playing the 4-drop, so it allows you to tutor up more for her Army of 1, I believe is a special effect that basically gets to kill a unit that turn. So overall, it is certainly a decent backup. I think there are some pretty good choices, but you might be able to sneak a couple copies of this into your deck. Again, it being an EX is also always going to be very, very good. Now, going into the next card, we have Dark Knight. It's a 2-drop, it's a 3K. You might have watched some other videos. Not really a fan of 2-drops in this game, unless it's going to be something like Tifa, because they can get outclassed very quickly, but he does have the ability, for each point of damage you have received, he gains plus 1,000 power. Now, again, it's not that great. I'm not terribly excited. However, if you are at 5 damage, and again, remind you, once you take the 7th, you lose, so you can only take 1 more damage past that, then we're looking at a 2-drop 8K, so super fringe playable. I definitely think there's a lot better forwards that you can be playing, but if you're going to be playing like I think it's Dark Knight and Dark Knight from Ice combo, they do kind of balance together and want you to have a very high damage total, as well as Garbaranth, which we'll be talking about here in a minute. So keep that in mind for future deck ideas. Up next, we have Vanille, and again, I'm sure I am butchering these names, and I absolutely apologize for that, but I am terrible at saying names. So, she is a forward, 7K. A little bit undercosted. We'd like to see 8, but, usually if they're a 4-drop 7,000, they do have some kind of special effect to them. So, when she is put into the field from the break zone, search your deck for a card, and I can never say that, so it's Hackathon Chair. I am just going to say Bike for the remainder of this video, so I do apologize, but Bike, and remove it from the game. If you do so, return Vanille onto the field dull. And we'll get into what that card does here in a minute. What's great about this is it does offer some utility in terms of giving you a recurring blocker. Now, keep in mind, it does enter the field dull, so she cannot block multiple times in a turn once she's broken, but you do get to have that. You don't have to spend the resources to get her back. And if you're playing against a deck that doesn't really have a lot of backups you want to destroy, then you're also just deck thinning. Again, this is one of those things, I think it's going to be stretched now. If we move into a meta where it's a very, very heavy backup destruction focus and you're already playing 3 of the cards that go with her, then sure, great, this card's going to go up in value. However, in some of the decks that I put together, I only played a 1 of for the backup destruction spell, simply because they changed it in the English version. It's just not as good as it can be, and it doesn't quite hit some of the backups it should, but we'll get back into that when we preview the card itself. Up next, we have Vincent, a 5-drop 9K. Ooh, something spicy. When Vincent attacks, he gains first strike. All right, that's pretty good. He's more often than not going to be able to kill whatever's blocking him. Berserk Dance special means, and that little S symbol means discard a copy of a card named Vincent. Doesn't have to be the same exact card, just any card that says Vincent in the name of it. Choose a forward, deal it 6,000 damage. Now, if it said just that part, I would be ecstatic about this card. However, it's a dull, so you can't, like Light Cloud, for example, you can attack and use his effects. Vincent, you're either giving up his attack, which is undoubtedly the best part about him, to shoot something for 6,000 damage, which it's just not enough damage. And you'll also find out there's only one other Vincent, in this set 1. And now, again, you can tutor up another Vincent through the backup, but again, overall, I'm just not terribly impressed. I think it would be a lot better if you could just discard multiple copies and go to town. However, call it balancing, call it what have you, but it's just not as good as it can be. Again, very, very strong attacker. However, its special is just it's just too situational. I never would really count on that to do what you want it to do, unfortunately, especially not in Earth unless you're pairing it with Fire, for example. Up next, we have Anacross, a 3-drop backup. The Earth forwards you control gain 1,000 power. Again, I just want to stress on this one, these cards are great if you're playing a mono-colored deck, and I might even go as far as to say absolutely required, just because of how the power level differences work, and adding plus 1,000 power can be quite powerful. However, that said, most people, and I again would very strongly recommend, are going to be playing 2 elements. And then once you realize that you're getting into 2 elements, let's factor in the general number that you're going to be playing around 15 elements, or 15 backups. That's 5 different backups, each at a playset, which is 3. So there's not a terrible amount of room that you can really rely on to fit these backups. So again, you're playing a monocolor deck, it's probably just mandatory because it's one of the better ones. However, if you're playing more than 1 element, I absolutely cannot recommend this card. So again, something just to keep in mind from a deck building perspective. Up next, we have Mystic, which is a 2-drop 3K. This one is finally going to break the rule on how I feel about 2-drops, unless it's Tifa. Now, one thing you might know, when you play a backup, you are limited to having 5. You cannot play the 6th backup unless you either free up a space or something of that nature. Mystic really does give you that opportunity to, again, put a backup that, let's say it had some kind of enter the battlefield effect, it's a one-time use and it's just kind of sitting there. Mystic can break it and get an advantage out of it to push her up to a 6K. Again, not terribly impressive, but it does allow you to free up your back row and to be able to play more support cards, more backup cards, which could then, either tutor up another character. Maybe you're playing Shantaro and it lets you wipe the field. There's other effects that it can do. Again, I'm not necessarily saying that this card is playable. However, with the limited number of interactions we currently have to free up backup slots on your field, I could see where maybe some people play this. Now, that said, again, the way that I'm at least approaching deck building is looking at 5 different backups that I would want to play, playing likely 3 of them, and then maybe pulling out a couple of the higher ends, like a Shantado. I might only play, that's a poor example, I'm always playing 3 Shantado, sorry. 3 Mustadios, I might only play 2, knowing that that's a 5-drop, and it's gonna take a little bit more resources to cast, so I don't ever really want to see it first turn exactly, but it does have value as the card game goes on. So again, be super mindful of how you're playing your backups, but again, I think Mystic is kind of neat in what it does. However, I think if you just play your backups a little bit smarter, you can get more use out of it. So again, this is kind of a card I could see where it's used, but overall, it's not going to be going in a lot of Earth decks. Up next, we have Guy, or the Guy. If you watch our videos, I call him because I cannot stand saying Guy. So he's a 4-drop, 8,000. Again, pretty on par. That's great. I'm happy with those stats. Brave, absolutely great value. Now, again, if it was just a vanilla end there, we might not play it. But he also has the effect Guy cannot be dulled by your opponent's summons or abilities. And if you're seeing a lot of ice, especially like the other video we just did with Shiva, and then I know there's some other backups that can dull as well, if I'm not mistaken, they then suddenly cannot interact with Guy. And if you're playing against another Earth deck, and let's say that they're playing Mustadio, which says the forward must be dulled to use the effect, Guy is just a really beefy person that sticks around and can really, again, because it has Brave, it doesn't dull to attack. So it's great that it gives you this opportunity to be both offensive and defensive for a 4-drop. So I really do like this guy, and I do think he's going to be seeing a lot of play in Earth-based decks. Now, again, it depends on kind of which way that you want to be taking it, but I've always loved casting this card, and it's just been a very resourceful forward to have on your field. So up next, we have Gabrynth. Now, I like this guy. He's a 6-drop, 8,000, so a little bit higher costing than what we may like. But for each point of damage you have received, he gains plus 1,000 power. So at 1 point of damage, he's a 9k, which is a pretty good spot to be. And then even at as low as 2 damage, he's suddenly a 10k. Now, that is going to be able to punch through a lot of guys. However, he is pretty high costed at 6. What I think is really, really strong about him is that once you get to 6 points of damage or more, he gains Brave. So again, this kind of goes back to that theme of the Dark Knights, where if you're playing a deck that really wants to be at a high damage life total, you can have a very, very powerful board that, especially Gabrith, if you get him to, 6 damage, so he has Brave, he can swing every turn, he gains 6,000 power, your opponent's going to have a very, very hard time to remove him unless they have something like an Alexander or an Odin to just outright kill him. So I think it's a nice card to have maybe a 1 to 2 of, but I really can't advise any more than that because it's great if you play him, early. You might think, yeah, it's an 8K, he might get a little bit bigger, but he doesn't have Brave until near the very end. So I like playing this guy when I'm already up, 3 damage or something, just so he has a little bit more beef to him. Up next, we have a couple of black belts. 4-drop AK, vanilla. Not much to say here. Won't see play. They need to have some kind of stats on them, or special effects rather, when they cost that much. 2-drop black belt. Now, a note I will say here, all decks need to be able to have a play where you have the option to play a 2-drop backup on turn 1, because you're only discarding 1 card, and it helps you set up for the next turn with either 3 or 5 drops. Now, that said, black belt, there's a few other backup options, but I could see where someone wants to play this just because it threatens the option of paying an Earth and doling him to choose a blocking forward, and it gains plus 1,000 power. Now, again, that might not seem like a great deal in this game when you're only talking 1,000. However, there's going to be many unique interactions where that 1,000 power actually makes a difference and really puts your opponent in an awkward spot. So I think black belt, with both being a 2-drop backup and having that plus 1,000 power effect, I think it definitely has some good things going for it, and I'd keep my eye on it. Now, I don't currently have a list where I'm running black belt, but again, I'm quite biased in that I'm always playing these more mid-range or control-based decks anyways, so I can't personally say that I'm going to be running it, but I think it's at least worth looking into. Up next, we have the 4-drop Gapal, which is an EX. Again, the ES perks are very strong effects. When he enters the field, all the forwards you control gain plus 4,000 power until end of turn. So this guy is actually quite interesting for an EX burst. If you think about it, if you take him off the first damage, suddenly your guys are 4K, plus 4K power, and they can probably block some amount of damage thereafter, but he's also good if you just play him on your turn for a 4-drop AK, and giving all your guys plus 4,000 power, and that's just a huge swing, simply because your opponent is then not going to want to block, because 99 times out of 100, they're then going to be losing their blockers in that event. So they're thinking, oh, well, I'm taking some damage. So certainly in the more aggressive decks, this can absolutely be a card in your 4-drop slot if you're going to be trying to turn the field sideways. So if you're playing a, say, Fire Earth deck, which is always going to be the way that I recommend with the more aggressive decks, if you have a Tifa in the field, which, think about a 2-drop swiftness, maybe she's already gotten in a few points of damage, she now is suddenly a 2-drop 8K for that turn, and your opponent who just played something that was, a 6, a 7, or even an 8K is now realizing that they can't block Tifa favorably, and they're forced to trade when they have spent so much more resources than you into that card, and now it just suddenly dies to a Tifa who is very well had already done her job up to that point. So I think this is going to be very interesting. Outside of that, it does, that's kind of like the two main things that it has going for it. Of course, it is also a Final Fantasy X character, so it is tutorable by Brother, I believe is the name of the backup tutor. So you can also use it in, say, a Wind Earth deck, and it'd just be able to tutor it up when you want. Maybe you only need to play a 1 of them, so you can push through that last bit of damage when you really want to. And by playing Brother, you're quote-unquote effectively running 4 in your deck. So that's something to keep in mind as well as a tutorable option to really push through for those last few points of damage you need. Speaking of pushing through damage, we have Kefka, the absolute trickster himself. 4-drop backup, again, a bit expensive. Choose 1 forward you control, it gains plus 5,000 power until end of turn. However, at the end of turn, break it. This is a card that I am still quite torn on. Now, I completely understand, and let's if we think about this in terms of maybe Kate Sith in a Earth Lightning deck. Kate Sith is a 1-drop 2K. They changed him to EX. That his EX is tap something down. So Kate Sith in that case, he's usually just used just to tap something, maybe get through a point of damage, or maybe it stopped one of their attackers. And then pretty much everything runs over him. If you play a Kefka to turn him up to a 7, again, I forget if it's 2,000 or 3,000, but well, even at 7,000, that's extremely relevant. If you're able to pump him up to a 7,000 in an instance where he was already going to die, and you're able to take one of their characters with you, you do not care if your wonderful lovable cat and Moogle combo is going to die at the end of the turn because they did their job. So there's certainly some kind of, and I don't like 3 of this card because it's just awful, and you want other kind of utility, but I can certainly see a role for at least 1 of in most Earth decks, maybe 2. And again, because we can't tutor him, but you are drawing 2 cards a turn, it really just depends on the color combinations and what you want to be doing, how much that you're going to be playing Kefka. Again, I do think it has some kind of usability to it, and I am really looking forward to seeing what kind of lists people come up with centered around him to really use his ability. Finally, getting to some more specials that are actually relevant. Kimhari 4 and Kimhari 2. Ronso Rage. Special to Earth, choose 1 forward opponent controls. Kimhari gains its special ability until end of turn. You can use this ability without paying any costs. Now, that's extremely relevant, because again, keep in mind, the S or the special is also part of that cost association. So if you're going against something like a Light Cloud, you can play him, steal their effect, and steal their, I think it's Omni Slash is the one that breaks it forward. I think that's the name of it. To break their cloud before they perhaps have a chance to respond. Now, this is one of the cards where I'm not terribly impressed with it right now. But if you ever see a meta where it's really revolving around key forwards that have these special attacks, I can absolutely see where this is going to come into play and really fake out your opponent. Because again, he is a Final Fantasy X character, so you can play, let's say, Earth Wind again, and being able to tutor up either part of him. Let's say you are playing the 2-drop backup as well, because why not? And you get to have multiple instances of his special, which can be very, very strong. Again, there is automatically some kind of increased value associated to 7, 10, and 13 characters because they do have that tutor effect. And again, hopefully the series of these videos are highlighting this, that the special effects are very, very strong, and when you can tutor for them, they're even that much stronger. So the one thing to keep in mind while I have both of these up on the screen, you'll notice in this top right corner, they are both missing the 3-card icon because you can only have one of these in play at a time. And that also means between forward and backup, you can only have one at all, not one in each, 1 forward or 1 backup. That's it. So again, this is important, and what I'd like to mention where Kimhari, the backup, he's actually a really great 2-drop, and especially later on once we get some more 3 and 4 colored decks, which I have a brew for that I'll put on the channel eventually, but it is quite gimmicky, I will say. It allows you to play him early, get some kind of advantage out of him, maybe tap for some additional elements, and then you play one of your breakups to get him out of the way so you can play your 4-drop. Or late game, you just have extra copies to draw into, so then you can discard them to Ronso Rage. So I really do like this combination, and I haven't had the chance to extensively play test, so I certainly don't know the number that's right between these. Again, we see Squall that has 2 cards, Cloud obviously has multiple cards, Laguna has several cards. Like there's quite a number of cards in the first set that have characters of the same name, and only one of them has a special to use. So that's something that you're really going to have to keep in mind going forward. That said, I really do like both of these cards, and I'm going to keep them on my radar. I don't think that they're going to be played a ton in set 1 per se, but I definitely do see their value going forward. So something to keep in mind, and again, absolutely insane thanks to the tutor. Oh, a couple of 1-drops that I have mixed feelings about. The Evoker 1-drop backup. Again, I will say that I am not excited for this card at all. Backup space is just so important, and you can't afford to have a card in your backup that has no text. And also, it is a miserable turn 1 play. Absolutely miserable, because whenever you discard a card, it produces 2 crystal points. So if you discard a card and then play Evoker, you lose the 1 extra crystal point. And again, burning resources in this game is, well, exponentially poor. It's just not a good position to be in. So I cannot stress enough, most, if not absolutely all decks will want to start their turn 1 play with a 2 crystal point backup. So please keep in mind going forward, I don't know what the proper numbers are going to be, but I am starting with at least a 3-3 mix in each of the elements that I'm going to be playing for a 2-drop that I can play, just because of how much it helps set up the rest of your game. And then we have the 1-drop Golem, which, now this card is something to really consider, and I think that it absolutely deserves a home in the more aggressive decks. For our Magic friends out there, anytime that you had Giant Growth, when that was especially a playable card, and it was almost always playable if I'm not mistaken off the top of my head, this is one of those cards. So again, it's an EX effect, so if you reveal it, you can hopefully stop their damage for the remainder of that turn, because you get to give one of your guys plus 4,000 power. But otherwise, it's a summon, so play it whenever you want, but EX Burst, choose one for it. It gains plus 2,000 power until end of turn. So again, keeping in mind, 1,000 power, that's probably enough to be playable. 2,000 power is definitely a much stronger place to be in. And then if it's blocking, it gains plus 4,000 power until end of turn instead. And absolutely, this will surprise your opponent. You only have to leave one backup active to be able to play this spell. And if you're playing a more aggressive deck and you just really want to win through some battle tricks, or maybe you need to just survive a couple turns and surprise them with having a guy that gets plus 4,000 power on defense, this is absolutely the card to do it for you. Again, the EX has been I've been unlucky on hitting this card, but the 1 or 2 times I think I have, it's been absolutely great for being able to I'm now going to give this guy a plus 4,000 power, and now your last 2 attackers don't really want to attack, or I'll be able to eat them both with my, much lower crystal point guy. So keep in mind, I definitely think Golem is going to be playable, and I look forward to seeing him in a ton of decks. This page is just absolute love for me. I have all the love in the world for these 2 specific cards. 7-drop Shantaro. When she enters, while she's on field, she gains Fire, Ice, Wind, Earth, Lightning, Water. What does this mean? She literally taps for everything except obviously Shine and Darkness, because those aren't actually things that you tap for. Those are things you just spend crystal points on. And when she enters the field, remove all forwards from the game. 2 things of quick note here is that she removes all forwards, so yes, this is yours and your opponent's, but if this is in your hand, you know it's going to be coming. Actually, I've got a few topics about this. 2 is that she taps for pretty much anything, so she allows you to, again, you want to be playing a Earth-based deck probably to begin with, but she allows you to, splash Water for Moogle, splash Lightning for Odin. There are quite a few cards that are really worth going the distance for. And if you're playing, let's think about it, 3 Shantaro and maybe say 1 Cosmos or Chaos, you suddenly have 4 cards which unlock all the colors in your deck, which is absolutely great because you only need to be able to produce 1 crystal point of that element. So again, this is a card that I am just absolutely excited for. Oh, the last thing I was going to say, remove all forwards from the game. There are some forwards that will say when they go from field to break zone or discard, like Vanille we mentioned earlier on, they come back. Shantaro says, no, you are not going to the break zone, you are just being removed. Magic players think exile, effectively the same, and it just helps you against certain cards. Now, keep in mind, this is a little bit more narrow in spec as of right now. However, I personally believe that this card is absolutely playable now, and it's just kind of like an added bonus that you get. So I am absolutely looking forward to bringing this Mage of Death upon everyone and really just getting to tinker around with the 3 color options that it gives. And then next, what a beautiful, beautiful card. 3-drop Cecil, 3-drop 7k. That's just, pretty good stats itself. When you receive damage, choose 1 forward an opponent controls. You may deal with 5,000 damage. Whew. So, if your opponent tries to attack with their stronger guy first, you're going to kill their weaker guy. If they attack with their weaker guy first, you're going to block it with Cecil. If you are playing perhaps Lightning for Lulu, the 5-drop, you're going to be able to deal 10k to something very, very easily in your turn if you decide to take damage. There's Ifrit, there's Shiva, there's Rahun. There's a lot of different ways to either do a total of 9,000 damage or nice even 10 that it can really put your opponent in an awkward spot. And again, 3-drop 7k, pretty good spot to be in, fairly enough aggressive as well. And, if you're attacking with him, then his effect is just going to trigger anyways. You don't have to worry about him always being on defense. So if you're playing fire, again, for spot removal, or maybe you're playing ice just to control their field, or if you're playing uh, earth and ice for squall, then you can do some really, really tricky things with squalls. Squall's a block effect and dealing 6k to something. There are a lot of nasty, nasty things that Cecil can do. Um, it's one of those cards I kind of ignored at first, and then as I thought about the more and more cards that interact with him, I was just like, wow, this is going to be a very annoying card for a lot of people to play against. Thankfully he's only a 7k, so cards like Brynhildr will kill him. But again, keep in mind, so maybe you decide to go Earth and you play the backup that gives him plus 1,000 power, or since you're already playing Earth, you have Golem as well to buff up his stats in response to some kind of damage removal spell. So I think this is just a great, great card all around, and I cannot wait to see how it plays out in some of our upcoming videos. Up next, we have Seraphy. This is a card I have such mixed feelings about. It's an EX, so that's always going to be good. It's a 2-drop 6k, so it's certainly above curve as well. When Seraphy enters the field, each player selects one forward from his or her break zone and adds it to his or her hand. So, in theory, yes, turn 1, you could play this, get the card back, and continue on about your hand, and essentially get a free summon. However, everyone does realize the importance of special abilities, so you have to be very, very careful. You don't give your opponent the option to get back a special from their graveyard for when they're already on the field forwards, but that's also kind of the good thing about it. You also have that ability. So this is one of those cards that it has a lot of good things going for it, and I like the fact that it can, it is free. It really is, because you're going to be getting a character back, and getting a character back means that you could always discard it for 2 crystal points. But it really puts you in a dangerous position. So I think in the more aggressive decks, absolutely, it's going to be a great 2-drop. 2-drop 6k is a pretty good spot to be in. And I'm tempted. I am very tempted to kind of play it in the decks that are very special attack heavy. However, I am just also fearful of giving my opponent better cards. So next we have a 2-drop Titan Summon. Choose one forward you control, dull it. It cannot be broken this turn. I'm not terribly in love with this card. It basically buys you a turn because it dulls it so they can't block multiple things. I'm sure there might be some cute interactions that I'm missing. However, there's a lot of other summon cards that you want to be playing. Now, again, if you're playing Mono Earth, sure, I understand. However, in just about every single color combination, there are just other things that I would rather be playing. And again, keeping in mind Golem being one of them, simply because it can give your guy plus 4,000 power, and then instead of just surviving, it can also hopefully kill something, if not multiple things, that turn. So I think Golem is just overall a better pick than this card, but I do think there might be some interesting combo things going on in the future with Titan. 2-drop Tama, World of Final Fantasy character. It is so adorably cute, but I'm just not that thrilled about it. So pay X, tap, sacrifice it, play one character card of cost X or less from your hand onto the field. So it's an awkward color fixer that you can also play turn 1. If you're playing, and keep in mind, it does say character card, so that is both forwards and backups. So if you're playing a multicolored deck where, let's just get crazy and say that you're playing 4, I can definitely see where this has value to it. However, you're effectively paying 2 more crystal points and losing a card to do what you could have done with better deck building. So even with Shantaro and even with either a Cosmos or a Chaos, I'm not terribly enthusiastic about playing this card. Now, down the road, it might have some kind of special use with, I'm going to blank on his name now, Golbez. Because Golbez wants you to be playing a 6-element deck, and then Tama can help you kind of cheat some of those characters into play. Outside of that very niche interaction, I can't possibly really see this being played right now. Again, could be wrong. Let me know in the comments below kind of things that you're going to be doing with Tama, but ultimately right now I'm just not terribly excited for it, even though it is a 2-drop backup, which is, again, fairly important. Up next, we have the 3-drop Baird with Hammer Blow. Special 2 Earth, choose a forward, deal 4,000 damage. Baird gains plus 4,000 power until the end of the turn. This is great for, say, killing a Tifa. And that's about it. Played with this card quite a bit and just overall wasn't that exciting. Now it is a little bit better that we have the tutor option. Keep in mind, however, if I'm playing and what I'm going to assume is going to be more of a Earth Fire Final Fantasy VII deck, 99 times out of 100, I'm going to want to tutor a Fire Cloud instead, so I can use my Light Cloud special effect. Again, I do realize that's not always going to be an option. However, it's kind of the more important play of the deck. So I think there's a cute Final Fantasy VII theme deck since we do have a starter, and you can build upon that. But ultimately, I'm not terribly happy about the Barrett cards in general. Something I am greatly excited about, though, is Delita. 2-drop forward, again, not a good spot to be in, but when he blocks, gains plus 2,000 power until end of turn. So this is very nice. It effectively blocks for a 7, so that's then very, very instantly under curved. But again, if you're playing Golem or something, you can very easily surprise your opponent and have a 11k blocker out of nowhere. So that's pretty nice to be. And then also keep in mind, it can help block things like Zidane or Yuffie, who are unblockable by 3 or 4 and higher respectively. But it still gives you that kind of early turn play to use if your deck needs a couple extra turns to build up. And then we have the 3-drop Delita, and this is a card that I read wrong for, I don't know, 2.5 weeks until someone pointed out. When Delita enters the field, choose one character you control, break it. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important to have kind of these options to break your backups. So if you're playing a deck where you're, again, very enter the battlefield heavy with your backups, now you can play Delita, who is insane as a 3-drop 9k, and just free up one of your backup slots. And really, it's hard to really understand how great that feels until you do it, where you play something like I played Earth Lighting, so it was a Sage, and I played Sage, I got the value out of it, and then I broke it, or I helped pay one of the crystal points towards Delita and broke it, just to get it off the field. And then you have this just beefy 9k character. And then if they have the audacity to block him, they can use his North Swain Strike, choose one forward, blocking, Delita, break it. So even if they try to just sacrifice one of their guys, or maybe they finally have a 9k on the board and they think this is it, this is their moment, they're finally going to trade with this annoying card that they had to face, you go, no, good sir, I'm going to break your forward instead, and this card is still going to be around to pressure your life total. So again, for how cheap it is just a great aggressive card. And again, keeping in mind that we're playing Earth, so we're playing Golem, we're playing Monk for the backup. There's other battle tricks that we can do that really push this card in the right direction. So ever since I read it, I have just been so impressed with this card, and the ability to free up some of your backups, so you're not blocked from playing other backups, is extremely important. So I definitely think that's going to be something good going forward. Then we have a 2-drop Geomancer, and again, 2 drops, good spot to be. When he enters the field, choose one forward. It gains Brave until end of turn. All right, not bad, little guy. The one thing that's awkward is that it is a 2-drop, so chances are you don't want to give your turn 1 play Brave because there's not anything, it won't be attacking. I suppose living the dream would be to play a Tifa and then play this and then attack with Tifa, but Tifa's not going to block anything in theory on the next turn. So that part is a bit awkward. However, giving something Brave so it can defend the next turn is a very good spot to be in. And then, of course, because it's a 2-drop, it allows you to accelerate your backup row so you can hold onto your precious cards. So definitely it's going to see play as, 1 to 2 of, probably even a 3 just to give you more utility options. But it is fairly awkward to play it on turn 1. Prishy, 5-drop, 8k. A little overcosted. Let's see what kind of her stuff does. When Prishy blocks, she gains plus 4,000 power until end of turn. Okay. I can deal with that. She's a very good defensive character. Prishy gains Brave until end of turn for a single Earth. What? Alright, we're definitely getting better. And then Oriole Uppercut. Double the power of Prishy until the end of turn. What? So you're telling me this one card, and again, keep in mind that we do have to discard for the effect. We can give it Brave, so we don't have to dull it, and it can still block on our next turn. And I could be wrong in saying this, but Pretty sure it's the best blocker in the game as well. But then also we can double its power. So that's that's insane. It's a lot of utility. Now again, it's the only card of its name in the set, so the special is going to be fairly difficult to come by. But again, her whenever she blocks, she gains plus 4,000 power. So to figure out the math, I'll just keep the numbers even. So if she gets attacked and you block, she goes up to 12,000 power. Let's say she got attacked with a 6, so she has 6 left. And then she gets blocked by another 6, gains another 4, and then suddenly she's still alive because she has 8,000 more power. Yeah, this is a really annoying card to get around because unless you have a way to kill it, every time she blocks, she gets plus 4,000 power. So again, she will die after the damage resolution of it, but because the attack and the defense are different, but she can effectively block two things. Any 2 cards in the game. Oh, actually no, I think Garland will get through after see how much power he gains again. But ultimately, she's going to be blocking several things before she dies. And again, if you get the uppercut and just double her power, it's going to be a very interesting spot to try to remove her. But again, she's a 5-drop, so Alexander can kill her. Big Odin can kill her. There's certainly other ways to get around it. Now, it is very awesome to think about that this power can just keep on building. But we'll see how relevant the doubling effect is. Bike. I'm just going to call it Bike. Hecaton Bike. Summon 3-drop, choose one backup of cost 3 or more, break it. Now, this is a card, it used to say choose a backup and break it, and it was great. It answered everything that we needed it to answer. However, now it says 3 or more, so it doesn't kill Red Mage, it doesn't kill Cosmos or Chaos, and there's a good slew of other 2-drops that it just doesn't kill that it should. So that is a bit of a bummer. However, it's still going to be important to get rid of some of those really annoying backups like Minwu, I believe is how you pronounce it. So it certainly has some playability, and again, maybe people just aren't playing the backups they should, or maybe the meta's a little bit different, what have you. Maybe we don't see those backups that are, in my opinion, extremely playable and should be played, but going down the road in future sets, there'll be more backups, there'll be more that cost 3 or more, and this card just increases in value. So this is one that I would definitely hang on to. Then we have Mustadio, 5-drop EX. Pretty high costed EX effect though. When he enters the field, choose a dull forward and break it. It's a bit expensive, but it is an EX burst. So I'm probably just going to play 3 of these because it's probably just going to be that good. And he's also a reason why Brave is so good in set 1. But anytime you can have a removal spell and play it backup, so then you can have, one more resource in your next turn, that's always a very good spot to be in. And then it's an EX on top of that, so you can just get a free kill effect from time to time. Again, it is a 5-drop, so you'll have to keep that in mind, and you'll have to certainly have a number of 2 and 3-drop backups in your deck, so you're not burning through all your resources every single turn. Up next, we have a couple of monks, 2-drop 6k, nothing quite exciting. It is a standard unit, which works with Warrior of Light out of water if you want to go that route, but ultimately not that exciting. 2-drop Monk backup. Again, 2-drop backup is nice, however, you have to break him for the effect. Choose one forward, gains plus 2,000 power until end of turn. I would love this card if it was just another black belt. However, they clearly had to make them somewhat different, so you have to sacrifice him, unfortunately. I certainly do not like this card. Yes, 2,000 power is nice, but not at the cost of losing one of your guys. Again, could be wrong because in theory you could play this early since it's 2-drop and only use it when you need it, but there are a number of other backups that I would rather play. So I could see this in more of the aggressive decks or in a slew of Earth decks in general, but I'm just not terribly excited with it off the bat. There we go. Vincent and Wedge, I doubled the slides there. Vincent 3-drop 7k. When he attacks, gains first strike. So again, a fairly decent aggressive card. But that's about all it has going for it. If you could bump this up by 1,000 to 8k, then I would be much more excited with it. So again, if you're playing Mono Earth maybe, or if you have a way to give your forwards plus 1,000, or you're playing Golem, there's certainly a number of battle tricks you can do to give him the more relevant power total. Then we have Wedge. As a 4-drop backup, when Wedge enters the field, you may search for one card named Biggs and add it to your hand. I will add that, Biggs is on the next slide, but I'll add that this whole core of the original trio from 7 I do not like, with the exception of Jesse. When Jesse enters your field, you may search for one Category 7 forward and add it to your hand. This card is fantastic, and I'm sure I've said it enough by this point, either in Facebook group, Reddit, where have you. The ability to tutor up a card, especially when it has such strong special attacks in the form of Light Cloud. No, this card cannot search Light Cloud itself, but you can search for your Fire Clouds. It allows you to have something to discard to Cloud. Sorry, I say Cloud so many times, but getting to then use Omni Slash on something. It really just tutors a removal spell, or it tutors exactly what you need Cloud to do that turn. So if you're playing a Final Fantasy VII deck and you happen to be playing Earth as well, now again, some people will want to play other elements with Fire. I understand that, but there is certainly tremendous value to playing a Earth Fire specific deck, so you can play multiple Jessies and play multiple Clouds to get their effects and just be able to Omni Slash your way to victory. Absolutely keep out an eye for that. Another Barrett 2-drop 6k, again, okay spot to be in, perhaps not that great, but deal 2,000 damage to all forwards your opponent controls with Grenade Bomb. Two really important things here. One, it just costs a special, so you just have to discard extra cards of Barrett, and you can tutor for Barretts, and it deals 2,000 damage to all the forwards. So you can, 1, threaten to break your opponent's AK by attacking with Barrett. They block, you deal 2,000 damage to all forwards. And then you have things like, I think it's Magus, Red Magus, that does 3,000 damage to all forwards your opponent controls. So, again, work with me here, a bit of Magical Christmas Land, but in theory, you could do 2 Grenade Bombs and a Magus in a single turn and deal 7,000 damage to their entire board. And that might just be enough to set them back several turns and let you run away with the game. So, again, I'd probably just rather go the Meteor Rain route if you have that option in Light Cloud, but this is certainly another factor to consider when they have something like, let's say, Zidane. Then we have Biggs as a 2-drop backup. Again, 2-drop backup, not a terrible spot to be in. When a backup you control is put into the field into the break zone, deal 1,000 damage to all forwards the opponent controls. I love and hate this card because, again, you want to then break your own backups, and as you saw earlier, if we play things like Mystic, I believe was the name of it, or if you play Delita, there are certain things that you can do that you just want to break your backups, and that's fine. However, it only deals 1,000 damage, so you really need to combo this with either Red Magus, or you need to combo with Barrett's Grenade Blast, or Grenade Hammer, whatever it's just called. You need to combo with Light Cloud's Meteor Rain. There's a number of cards you really have to balance with it and put towards your deck to work in that way that I'm not entirely convinced that it's worth it. However, a 2-drop backup that is most certainly worth it, and I figured he should certainly go in this section because Chaos and Shantado 9 times out of 10 are going in the same deck because of Sephiroth, is Chaos. Chaos can be played onto the field even if you control other dark characters. You can play 2 or more dark characters onto your field, and while Chaos is on your field, it can produce any Crystal Point. Tap Dull to produce any Crystal Point element. And again, it's a 2-drop backup, so it is certainly one of the it is probably the best backup that you can play on turn 1 in every single game that you're going to be playing. There might be small exceptions. I think the 2-drop Yuna is a water backup that reduces your water summons by 1. Sure, I will give it that to be slightly, on par if you're playing a water-heavy deck, but overall, if you're playing 2 elements and you have the room for it, you should be playing a Chaos or a Cosmos. They are just that good. So I am very much looking forward to this character, or this backup to play. The thing I will keep in mind is, let's say you live the Christmas Miracle Land and you have 2 Sephiroths and a Chaos in play. If they destroy your Chaos, you will lose both of your forwards due to rule process. However, if you only have 1 dark forward and Chaos, and they break your Chaos, you get to keep your forward. So keep that in mind going forward as your deck building. And another card that we'll talk about, the Emperor, is absolutely amazing card to be playing with Chaos, and that's something to look out for as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Make sure to like the video. That helps us a lot. Comment down below. Let us know what element you're looking forward to the most in mixing with Earth. And then subscribe, all that good stuff. And please check out Josephier's gaming channel as well. He is from the UK, and he is going to be doing a ton of Final Fantasy TCG content as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will catch you on the next 6 Sages Gaming set review for Final Fantasy TCG. Have a good one.